Here we are again at Tech Unplugged Live from NetApp Inside 2016 in Berlin. I am with Garret Mueller.
Hi.
Hi Garret, and your role is
I'm a technical director.
Technical director.
That's
okay,
right.
for open source technologies at NetApp.
That's right.
Good.
Yep.
And so, what does it mean?
Basically means that I'm technically responsible for the direction, the roadmap, the strategy related to our engagement in open source and open source communities at NetApp across all the entire portfolio. So I'm not focused on any particular product, but tying the whole entire data fabric together in relation to how it fits into open platforms.
Okay, interesting. So can you give us an example of some of the project, the most interesting project you are following now?
Sure, I mean, one of the ones that's getting a lot of excitement lately is the Docker Volume plugin. So we released that earlier this year. It ties in all of our platforms together and allows you to natively, through the Docker ecosystem, consume NetApp storage. So
I already read about this plugin, and I know that it's common to all your platform, which, from my point of view, could be a little bit of a risk because potentially the performance is not optimized for one single platform, but but on the other side you have the simplicity, okay? So can you talk more about this?
Sure. So it's actually a common misconception we get from a lot of people is that this plugin somehow sits in the data path, right? That it's somehow looking at packets, it's actually allowing them to flow through containers, but the reality is it's a control plane. It's actually communicating with the APIs to provision storage, mount them to hosts, and then mount them to containers so that it just feels like a native file system to the container that's running. And that's how it happens across all the different platforms. The benefit for us is one, we actually have the opportunity to think about the problem sets associated with the different platforms and how they behave differently, which is actually a great, unique problem to have when you have multiple platforms, right? Because they all have slightly different ways to engage in this space. They have different APIs, they have different capabilities. And when you have to understand all that and think about things like the data fabric, then the ability to tie it all together becomes possible when you have a single integration like that.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Indeed, you said it right. So it's not a driver as we think usually about a device driver, but it's actually something different. So.
Yeah.
And what other projects are you following? So the community now for NetApp, I met people that are coming from the OpenStack community.
That's right.
Mostly from SolidFire, but NetApp Fast has a huge installed base also.
Yeah, in fact, in the OpenStack community, you might not realize this, a lot of people don't, is that we're one of the the largest contributors to that community in terms of storage, the storage community part of it. But we're also, from a commercial perspective, the top 2 most deployed platforms. So before we purchased SolidFire, NetApp was number 1, SolidFire was number 2, and now we're just more number 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so do you also provide services? I know that you follow the community part mostly.
That's right.
But actually end users ask for services on top of this open source projects.
Sure.
So how do you help them to adopt or just modify them to fit in their environment?
Yeah, so we engage with partners, partners like Mirantis, partners like Red Hat and others that are actually deploying in the OpenStack case, they have their own distributions of OpenStack, and they support both the Cinder and the Manila plugins that we work on, as official plugins within their ecosystem. So they're actually supporting that for us, and we work with them as kind of a higher tier of support if there's issues, that kind of thing. But also, we're also evolving out of just the OpenStack space and looking at containers and things like that too. So you can imagine in the future that we would have similar relationships with similar partners to deliver some of those capabilities in that space.
It's interesting, actually. So, open source, so I imagine that you have a GitHub repository, something where the listeners can find something.
Right, actually the best place to go to engage with not just myself, but the entire kind of developer-focused open ecosystem community is at netapp.io. So it's actually a new site that we just launched about a month ago or so. It's called The Pub. Because actually both SolidFire and NetApp have a great beer culture. And so it's just kind of the perfect thing. But it's a great way to engage with the people that are actually doing the development of these integrations and know things about APIs, know things about just open ecosystem, integrations with things like Docker and OpenStack and Chef, Puppet, Ansible, those kinds of things. So if you have any questions about those kinds of technologies or just you want to engage with the community, it's a great place to go.
Okay, good. And do you have a Twitter handle, something that...
I do. It's Innergy, INNERGY.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for your time.
You bet. Thank you. Appreciate it. It's fun.